So we're here to talk about the Shudder original, the Mortuary collection, which is going to be out on Shudder October 15th. Just right off the bat, the thing that really stood out to me was the pacing of the film. I know sometimes it could be challenging with so many other stories within the film, but I never once felt like it slowed down or that I started losing interest. It just kept building. Can you talk about how you're able to put all that together so well?
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment. That's actually one of the biggest things that you struggle with in post with the I would say on indie films, but I guess it's all films, is just like get the time run down, get the runtime down, get the runtime down, because people want short and they want sweet. And interestingly enough, the original draft of the script and the script that we went into production with, actually the first story in the movie, which is sort of a 5-minute story roughly, that used to be a 20-minute story. So as you can imagine, the movie would have run over 2 hours, probably 2.5 hours in that range. So as soon as we were getting into production, we quickly realized, oh man, we're going to have to lose one of these stories because this thing is going to be ridiculous. As far as sort of pacing and kind of tackling that, I think a lot of it just comes down to having a lot of experience with the short film format and kind of understanding that every scene in a short film has to do 7 different things, because you don't have this time to spend with the characters and this time to build the world. You really have to get in there, tell people who the characters are, set up the premise, and then start going with it. And so you kind of load every scene with as much information as possible. The challenge is then, if you're in the post and you need to trim out something, it's really incredibly hard to actually cut an entire scene because you lose huge chunks of the storytelling. So you have to really get in there and start to sort of slice and dice with a scalpel to try to make something get under a short runtime. But I think a lot of it also is like a testament to the actors, these guys, the people that sort of pull you through the movie, and the production design and all this sort of world building and all that stuff kind of coming together to make it feel like something interesting, even if it's not maybe always so.
Now speaking of character, Clancy, you're Montgomery Dark. One thing that surprised me the most is how much personality he had. You're kind of looking at the poster, and maybe you expect him kind of to be this almost like robotic, ghoulish figure, but there was so much more to him. Can you talk about your character, and anybody else also can chime in on Montgomery Dark?
Well, it's all in Ryan's writing. Ryan gives him that personality, gives him that rapport with Sam. I was just thinking, when Ryan was just saying about the pacing and stuff, Montgomery Dark is a pretty stereotypical character. I mean, we all know who Montgomery Dark is. He's the creep that lives in the big house on the hill, and he's or the creepy mortician or whatever. We're sort of familiar with that archetype. But then it gets interesting when Sam shows up and sort of draws him out of what he is, and he gets excited talking to Sam and all the rest of that. And we already sort of know, we think we know about Montgomery Dark, and then this other person shows up and kind of draws him out. And what's interesting is we don't know about this other person until the very end. And it's just kind of a really clever thing that Ryan did with this script all the way through. He also, misdirects you thinking that this is just going to be a couple of people walking around, a mortician looking at creepy, pictures and creepy drawings and, creepy instruments and just telling stories. And then at the end just blows everybody's mind with the final reveal. So
yeah. I mean, I think that was a big emphasis from the start. Is the movie began sort of the conception as, all right, what are the things that I love the most about classic horror and classic horror anthologies? What are the archetypes that we sort of know and we love, or at least I do as a fan? I love the house on the hill. I love the ghoulish character. I love the stunted speech. I love the crypt keeper and that sort of the fun factor of those storytellers. So that was step one. But then we were like, well, the homage films are fine, but how do we start with the homage but sort of build something a little bit more interesting? And that's when sort of the discussion about who the characters are sort of behind the scenes, like what is the crypt keeper doing when we're not there to listen to his stories? Is he lonely? Is he sad? Is he trapped in that sort of house that we see at the beginning of the HBO series? And so I think once you start getting into that and exploring that, that's when it started to get really interesting. And that became sort of a through line for the whole movie, which is like, what are the masks that these characters wear when we first meet them? And then what does the onion look like when you start to peel back the layers?
Look, Caitlin's getting all kerfuffed listening to you talk again, Ryan.
I was just thinking of like, you know, like Montgomery and how he is, you know, I mean, Clancy, you're a funny guy. Like you have comedy chops. So I think you brought I feel like you brought a lot of yourself to the character in the sense of like your comedy. And just like how good you are at tapping into, you know, your physical, comedy for yourself and like your voice and finding that. But yeah, I like thinking of like Montgomery and like what he does, like because I've thought about that. I was like, what is this guy about? Like what does he do, like, you know, when he's alone? And it's like I like always pictured Montgomery like dancing with the corpses or like doing something super weird. You know, he's an eccentric guy, so it's always funny to think, you know, outside the box of what these characters are really about. Yeah, like when you peel the onion skin and, you know, get down to the nitty.
That's awesome.
Now the other half of this dynamic duo, we have Caitlin, we have Sam.
Yeah.
Who, you know, the first thing I noticed is she's not unfazed by the mortuary, not unfazed by darkness, and not really unfazed by the stories either. So without giving too much away, what do we need to know about Sam?
Well, I definitely think there's a female empowerment that goes along with this character. I think that she's really strong. I think that when she meets Montgomery, she's really interested in him, and she, in a sense, is kind of like met her match a little bit, in the sense that there's someone else that, you know, enjoys the macabre as much as she does. So yeah, I feel like that she is a really strong character, and there's more to her. She's probably too smart for her own good. And yeah, she gets to go toe to toe with this this mortician that is larger than life. And I think that she enjoys hearing all these larger than life stories and getting to be involved in that.
Yeah, it's funny to think about sort of, I love thinking about the dynamic between the two of them because it sort of illuminated so much about how this came to be after the fact of making the movie. But the thing that I realized is that, you know, I sort of grew up in the Twilight Zone. I grew up on Tales from the Crypt. I love the old Gothic anthology movies of the 70s. And I love classic horror. So I have this like soft spot in my heart for the classic Gothic, old-fashioned morality tales of those types of stories. And so Montgomery kind of is that part of me. He is sort of this like, he's the old way, and he's talking about how the old way is the best way. And then Sam, she kind of represents this other component of my sort of taste, which is like, but I also feel like horror should surprise and sort of bend genres and sort of do the unexpected. And so Sam almost represents like the new idea of what horror should be. And it's the two of them coming together and sort of debating on sort of the merits of story, where I think sort of the sweet spot kind of ends up being, because I think that they're both right and they're both wrong. And it's sort of kind of up to the audience to figure out, you know, where you live as a fan.
You really actually answered my next question, which was going to be about, you know, what makes this movie a little bit different than other anthology films. So I guess what I'll move on to is, how are you able to find such good balance between horror, dark humor, gore, thrills, surprises, because it has all of it and it all blends really well.
Thank you. That's an amazing compliment. I think, I mean, a big part of it is, again, this is coming up, making a lot of shorts. And in shorts, you have a very small amount of time and a very small amount of characters to deal with. And it really becomes about fine tuning every single detail. It's like every frame should have clues. Every character sort of moment should have nuance. It should be a thing you can watch again and again. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the short format. What becomes incredibly difficult is if you try to do that 5 times at once, which is sort of what we did in essence. And the only way we realized to pull that off, especially with the low budget we had, was that we had to sort of piece these out over the course of 2 years, not even including the Babysitter Murder segment that Caitlin was in, which we shot about 5 years ago. So we kind of took the time to sort of get in there and sort of micromanage every element to sort of make everything as big and as fun. And that was the thing the whole way through. We kept saying to ourselves, like, is it fun? And if something wasn't fun, like me and my producer, Justin, we would take my camera and we'd go and we'd reshoot something to make it more fun. We've really pushed ourselves to try to make every single component, you know, within means. There were big ideas that sort of got trimmed out along the way. But I think it's just all about detail and sort of focus. And it's a thing that gets lost, I think, with independent movies, especially when time and money is low. You just have to blaze through and all of the good stuff kind of gets trimmed away. The first stuff to go is all the fun detail stuff. And then as far as tone goes, I mean, I tell people that the way that I've sort of find the perfect tone of sort of horror and comedy is that if my mom watches a scene and she says, that was really scary, but my friends watch the scene and they're like, oh, I like what you did there, then it's sort of perfect because I'm kind of hitting I'm hitting all the horror stuff right for people that just want that. But there's like maybe something more if you want to look a little bit deeper.
I want to wrap it up with kind of a fun question. Did you guys have any fun or memorable scares on set that weren't part of the movie with each other?
Oh.
Did we have fun? Nah.
No.
The hardest thing we were. No, yeah, we had lots of fun. What do you mean?
No, I'm talking. Were you guys like scare each other on set? You know, just kind of.
I don't know.
I don't remember scaring each other too much. You know, the house that we filmed in, the Flavel house, was really creepy. Mm-hmm. And if you were in that house at night, like alone, like all the rooms were, and they say that don't they say that it's haunted? I think that there's like some.
Yeah, they said it's animated. It's certainly animated by some of the people that there was the daughter.
Yeah.
The daughter of Flavel. There was that room that was like, they said nobody should go in that room. That's where the daughter lived and the daughter died, right? They were
closed by themselves and stuff like that. So that house, I feel like, being in that house was really creepy and really scary.
It had a cool gothic history in that, like, one corner of the house is this tower that's like this crazy winding staircase that goes up to this really high tower that overlooks the entire coast. And so it's called, I think, the Widow's Peak or the Widow's Tower or something, because like women would stand up there and wait to see their husbands come home.
It's
sailors.
It's that part right there.
I don't remember any specific scares. I think I probably walked around like I was on the cusp of a nervous breakdown the whole time. So people probably were
Did you go up there though? And did you go up there into that cupola? Because it had like, did you go up there, Kaylee? Because it had like flies and shit. It was like really like
fenced off. Like, it's a museum, so I think that they had it marked off. I wish that I would have, though. That would have been really cool.
I snuck up there. It was like all dead flies and
oh wow,
it was crazy.
It was like, you know, like we gotta get out there. Yeah. Mo and I went up there at one point, you know.
Sweet.
Well, we snuck around the house a little bit. Now they'll probably never let anyone shoot there again. Now that I've admitted.
Oh man.
It was huge. It was the attic was huge, kind of empty and huge, and
I think you can't. Even when you look at Clancy, like the house behind Clancy, it looks like a regular size house, but what you don't realize is the doors are like 20 feet tall. Like, it's just scaled up, so it looks small in pictures, but it's ginormous when you're there.
Yeah.
All right, so we saw that the house is filled with different books with many stories. So I want to wrap it up with the question is, are we going to see more stories from the mortuary in the future?
God, I hope so. I mean, I think the initial idea was to build a sort of a keystone and a world that was hinted at several more stories sort of going beyond. Like, the town itself, I think, has sort of creepy things lurking in all the shadows and the nooks and crannies. And I have a sort of a million ideas that could sort of extend out this universe. So I hope so. I don't know. You can ask these guys separately. I'm not sure how they feel about it, but
yeah, well, it's got a new it's got a new mortician in it. You know, Sam is the new mortician, so you've got seasons and seasons of this.
Maybe she is. Maybe she takes the job, Clancy. I don't know.
Well, that's what the story was. I mean, you know,
so much.
You can have all the babies you want. You can just keep having babies.
Just have a little more baby mortician.
Caitlin, Clancy, Ryan, thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I really appreciate it.
And thank you.
Go ahead and wrap this up by reminding everybody to watch Mortuary collection on Shudder, October 15th. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye.
See ya.
Take care.